Nnamdi Kanu, Chief Prosecutor Abubakar Malami's wife and son have been caught and sent to prison in another shocking 8.7 billion naira fraud and money laundering. The former Attorney General of the Federation has been arrested and remanded in prison over corruption allegations. Abubakar Malami is facing an earlier 212 billion naira fraud case already linked to his time in office. Right now, Abubakar Malami's wife and son were also arrested. According to information from our reliable source, they were charged over a separate 8.7 billion naira money laundering case. The EFCC is said to have filed multiple count charges against Malami and his family members. The arraignment reportedly took place at a federal high court in Abuja. Malami appeared in court alongside his son, drawing public attention. Many political commentators frame this as a major fall from power for a former top justice official. The case is presented as one of the most high-profile corruption trials involving a former AGF. Some political commentators repeatedly label the situation as a proof of a family-wide corruption network. They strongly link Malami to the prosecution of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of IPOB. They accuse Malami of personally influencing Nnamdi Kanu's arrest, rendition, and continued detention, and alleges Malami interfered with judges and court processes using bribery. Some political commentators argue that Malami's corruption undermined the Nigerian judiciary. They claim court judgments made during Malami's tenure should be reviewed or overturned. Some political commentators contrast Malami's court appearance with Nnamdi Kanu's, portraying Nnamdi Kanu as a victim and hero. The arrest is framed as karma or poetic justice for Malami's past actions. Some political commentators calls for broader investigations into judges and officials who served under Malami. It demands Nnamdi Kanu's immediate release, arguing his trial was compromised by corruption. Overall, it presents the situation as a symbolic collapse of alleged persecutors of Nnamdi Kanu, while stressing that all matters remain subject to court determination. Now, let's critically analyze this news update. The story unfolding around Abubakar Malami, Nigeria's former Attorney General of the Federation, has become one of the most talked about corruption scandals in recent times, and honestly, the layers to this case keep getting thicker and more complicated. For those of us who have watched Nigerian politics closely over the years, seeing someone who once held such enormous power now facing serious criminal charges alongside his own family members is both shocking and in some strange way almost predictable, given the pattern we've seen with public officials in this country. Let me walk you through what's happening here, because this isn't just about one man or one case. It's about power, justice, accountability, and the complicated web of Nigeria's political and legal system that affects all of us, whether we realize it or not. So, here's where we are right now. Abubakar Malami, who served as Nigeria's chief law officer under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, has been arrested and remanded in prison by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC. But this isn't his first brush with corruption allegations since leaving office. According to reports that have been circulating, Malami is already facing a separate fraud case involving a staggering 212 billion naira. Yes, you read that correctly. 212 billion naira. That's the kind of money most Nigerians can't even properly imagine, because it's so far removed from our daily reality where people are struggling to afford basic food items and transportation. Now, in what appears to be a separate but equally damaging development, Malami's wife and son have also been arrested and charged. The allegations against them involve money laundering to the tune of 8.7 billion naira. Again, we're talking about billions here, not millions. The EFCC has apparently filed multiple counts of charges against Malami, not just himself, but members of his immediate family as well. This family angle is particularly significant because it suggests, at least according to the prosecution's theory, that this wasn't just one person taking advantage of their position. Instead, it paints a picture of what some observers are calling a coordinated family enterprise built on allegedly corrupt practices. The arraignment took place at the Federal High Court in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. And from what we understand, it drew considerable public attention. Malami appeared in court alongside his son, which must have been quite a scene. Imagine someone who once represented the entire Nigerian government in legal matters, who prosecuted cases on behalf of the state, who wielded immense influence over the justice system, now standing in the dock as a defendant. This symbolism alone is powerful, regardless of how the case ultimately plays out in court. For many Nigerians, especially those who have been following Malami's career closely, this development feels like something out of a dramatic screenplay. Here's a man who served as the Attorney General of the Federation, the chief legal advisor to the president, the person responsible for overseeing prosecutions and ensuring that justice was served across the country. He had enormous power, the kind of power that could shape legal outcomes, influence court decisions, and determine the fate of other Nigerians who found themselves on the wrong side of the law. And now, that same system he once controlled is turning its machinery on him and his family. Political commentators across Nigeria have been having a field day with this development, and understandably so. Many are framing this as a spectacular fall from grace for someone who occupied one of the most powerful positions in Nigerian government. When you think about it, the Attorney General of the Federation is arguably one of the top 5 most influential people in any administration. They control the levers of legal power. They decide who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. They advise the president on constitutional matters. They represent the government in court. The position comes with immense authority and, unfortunately, as we've seen repeatedly in Nigeria's history, immense opportunity for corruption if the person holding that office chooses to abuse their power. Some analysts are calling this one of the most high-profile corruption trials involving a former Attorney General in Nigeria's history, and they may have a point. While we've seen other senior government officials face corruption charges after leaving office, there's something particularly striking about the nation's chief law officer being accused of such massive financial crimes. It's like finding out that the head of the police has been running a criminal enterprise. The irony is almost too much to process. But here's where the story takes on an even more politically charged dimension. And this is the part that has really gotten people talking, especially within certain communities and political circles. There's a strong narrative emerging that directly links Malami to the arrest, detention, and ongoing prosecution of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous peoples of Biafra, IPOB. For those who may not be fully familiar with this aspect of recent Nigerian history, Nnamdi Kanu is a controversial figure who has been agitating for the independence of Biafra, representing the interests of many Igbo people who feel marginalized within the Nigerian state. Kanu's case has been one of the most contentious legal and political issues in Nigeria over the past several years. He was initially arrested, then jumped bail and fled the country, only to be mysteriously brought back to Nigeria in what many have described as an illegal rendition from Kenya. His supporters have long argued that his prosecution was politically motivated, that it violated both Nigerian law and international human rights standards, and that the entire process was compromised from the beginning. Now, many political commentators, particularly those sympathetic to Kanu's cause, are pointing fingers directly at Malami as the architect of what they consider to be Kanu's persecution. They're alleging that Malami personally influenced and orchestrated Kanu's arrest and rendition from Kenya, which, if true, would raise serious questions about the legality of the entire process. They're also making even more serious allegations that Malami interfered with judges and court processes through bribery and other forms of corruption, essentially rigging the judicial system to ensure that Kanu remained in detention regardless of what the law actually required. These are extremely serious allegations, and we need to be clear about something important here. These claims are being made by political commentators and activists, and while they may have their own evidence and reasons for making these accusations, they remain allegations until proven in court. The Nigerian legal system, flawed as it may be, still operates on the principle that people are innocent until proven guilty. But the fact that these allegations are being made so loudly and repeatedly tells us something about the level of distrust many Nigerians have in their justice system, particularly when it comes to politically sensitive cases. The narrative being pushed by many of Kanu's supporters is that Malami's own corruption and alleged criminal activity fundamentally undermines any case that was prosecuted during his tenure as Attorney General. Their argument goes something like this: if the person overseeing the prosecution was himself deeply corrupt, if he was allegedly bribing judges and interfering with court processes, then how can we trust any of the legal outcomes that happened under his watch? They're arguing that the entire judicial process during Malami's time in office was compromised, tainted by corruption from the very top. Some are going even further, calling for a comprehensive review or even the overturning of court judgments that were made during Malami's tenure. Now, this is a radical suggestion, and from a legal standpoint, it would be extraordinarily complicated to implement. How do you go back and review potentially thousands of cases? How do you determine which ones were affected by corruption and which ones were legitimate? What happens to people who were convicted during that period? What about people who won cases? The legal and practical implications of such a move would be staggering, but the fact that people are even suggesting it shows just how deeply Malami's alleged corruption has shaken public confidence in the justice system. What's particularly interesting from a narrative standpoint is how some commentators are contrasting Malami's current court appearance as a defendant with Nnamdi Kanu's court appearances over the years. They are painting a picture of poetic justice, suggesting that the person who allegedly orchestrated Kanu's persecution is now getting a taste of his own medicine. They are portraying Kanu as a victim who has been vindicated, a hero who stood up against a corrupt system and is now being proven right as that system's corruption is exposed for all to see. The language being used is quite deliberate and emotionally charged. Words like karma and poetic justice keep coming up in discussions about Malami's arrest. There's a sense among many people that what's happening to Malami is somehow cosmically appropriate, that he's finally facing consequences for actions that many believe caused tremendous suffering to Kanu and his supporters. Whether you agree with this framing or not, it's undeniably powerful, and it's resonating with a lot of people who have felt that justice in Nigeria is selective, that the powerful can do whatever they want without consequences, and that the legal system is just a tool used by those in power to crush their opponents. Some activists and commentators are now calling for even broader investigations. They are not satisfied with just Malami being prosecuted. They want investigations into judges who presided over cases during his tenure, court officials who may have been complicit in alleged corruption, and other government officials who served under or alongside Malami. The argument is that corruption on this scale couldn't have been the work of just one person. If Malami was indeed running a corrupt operation, he would have needed accomplices, enablers, people willing to look the other way or actively participate in corrupt practices. This demand for broader accountability is interesting because it acknowledges something that many Nigerians instinctively understand. Corruption in Nigeria is rarely an individual act. It's systemic. It's embedded in institutions. It requires networks of people who benefit from and protect corrupt practices. Going after just one person, even someone as powerful as a former Attorney General, might provide some satisfaction and even some justice, but it doesn't fix the underlying problems that allowed that corruption to flourish in the first place. And of course, woven throughout all of this is the persistent demand from Kanu's supporters for his immediate release. They're arguing that his entire trial has been compromised by the corruption that's now being exposed.
If the Attorney General who oversaw his prosecution was himself corrupt, if judges were allegedly bribed, if the entire process was tainted from the beginning, then they argue that Kanu should be released immediately because he cannot possibly have received a fair trial. From a legal perspective, this argument has some logical merit, though implementing it would be complicated. Courts generally don't just throw out cases because the prosecutor or a government official was corrupt. They look at the specific evidence in each case, whether proper procedures were followed, whether the defendant's rights were violated. But in the court of public opinion, which often matters almost as much as actual courtrooms in Nigeria, the argument is straightforward and compelling. How can we trust any prosecution that came out of a corrupt system overseen by a corrupt official? Now let's step back and think about what all of this means for Nigeria more broadly, because that's really the most important question here. Yes, Malami's case is dramatic and fascinating in its own right, but what does it tell us about where Nigeria is as a country and where it might be heading? First, there's the question of accountability. For years, Nigerians have complained that public officials loot the treasury with impunity, that powerful people never face consequences for their actions, that corruption is just accepted as the way things work. The fact that someone as powerful as a former Attorney General is now facing prosecution is significant. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the culture of impunity is starting to crack. Of course, we've been here before. We've seen other big arrests that ultimately led nowhere. So while it's tempting to be optimistic, many Nigerians are adopting a wait-and-see attitude. They want to know if Malami will actually be convicted and if there will be real consequences, or if this is just political theater that will eventually fade away. Second, there's the issue of selective justice. Some people are asking whether Malami is being prosecuted because he genuinely committed crimes that demand accountability, or because he's fallen out of favor politically. Nigeria has a long history of using corruption charges as a political weapon. When you are in power and in the good graces of those above you, you are protected. But once you fall out of favor or a new administration comes in, suddenly all those questionable deals you made are being investigated. This pattern makes it hard for ordinary Nigerians to trust that justice is really being served rather than just politics being played. Third, there's the broader question of institutional rot. If the allegations against Malami are true, they suggest that corruption reached into the very highest levels of Nigeria's justice system during the previous administration. This isn't just about money being stolen, though that's bad enough. This is about the fundamental integrity of the institutions that are supposed to protect citizens' rights and ensure fairness. When the justice system itself becomes a tool of corruption and political persecution, society loses one of its most important safeguards against tyranny and abuse. The amount of money allegedly involved in these cases is also worth reflecting on. We're talking about billions upon billions of naira. To put this in perspective, that's money that could have built hospitals, schools, roads. It could have provided clean water to communities that desperately need it. It could have funded scholarships for thousands of young Nigerians trying to get an education. Instead, if the allegations are true, it was diverted into private accounts, used to fund lavish lifestyles and hidden away through money laundering schemes. Every naira stolen from public funds is a naira that wasn't used to improve the lives of ordinary Nigerians who are struggling. As someone watching all of this unfold, I can't help but feel a mixture of anger and sadness. Anger because corruption on this scale is inexcusable and causes real suffering for millions of people. Sadness because this story, as dramatic as it is, isn't really unique in Nigeria. We've seen similar scandals before. We'll probably see more in the future. The names change, the amounts might vary, but the basic pattern remains depressingly familiar. What makes this case particularly resonant, though, is the connection to Nnamdi Kanu's situation.
Whether you support Kanu's cause or not, whether you believe in his vision of Biafra or not, the question of whether he received fair treatment under the law is important to all Nigerians. Because if the government can illegally rendition someone from another country, if they can keep someone in detention despite court orders for their release, if they can corrupt the judicial process to ensure a particular outcome, then none of us are truly safe. Today it might be Nnamdi Kanu, tomorrow it could be anyone who challenges those in power or simply finds themselves on the wrong side of a political dispute. The fact that all of this is playing out in public, with arrests and court appearances and media coverage, is itself significant. In some ways, it shows that Nigeria's democratic institutions, flawed as they are, still function to some degree. There is still a free press reporting on these issues. There are still courts where these cases are being heard. There are still activists and commentators who can speak out and demand accountability. These aren't small things, even if the system is far from perfect. As this case moves forward, there are several things to watch for. First, will Malami actually be convicted, or will the charges somehow disappear or be reduced through the mysterious processes that often characterize high-profile cases in Nigeria? Second, will there be real consequences if he is convicted, or will we see the usual pattern of endless appeals and delays that allow powerful people to avoid actually serving time? Third, will this case lead to broader reforms and investigations as some are demanding, or will it remain an isolated incident? And perhaps most importantly for many people following this story closely, what will this mean for Nnamdi Kanu? Will the exposure of Malami's alleged corruption strengthen Kanu's legal position? Will it lead to his release as his supporters are demanding, or will his case continue to drag on regardless of what happens to Malami? It's important to emphasize, as I have tried to do throughout this analysis, that despite the serious allegations and the dramatic nature of these events, all of these matters remain subject to proper judicial determination. Malami, like any other Nigerian citizen, deserves a fair trial. The charges against him need to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. His family members who have been arrested also deserve fair treatment under the law. We can't allow our anger at corruption or our desire for justice to lead us to abandon the very principles of fairness and due process that we want our system to uphold. At the same time, we also can't be naive. The Nigerian justice system has shown itself to be vulnerable to political influence and corruption. Cases against powerful people often move very slowly or somehow get resolved in ways that seem suspicious. So while we hope for genuine justice, we also need to remain vigilant and continue demanding transparency and accountability throughout this process. What's undeniable is that this case has captured the Nigerian public's attention in a way that few corruption cases do. Maybe it's because of Malami's former position, maybe it's because of the connection to Nnamdi Kanu's controversial case, maybe it's because of the amounts involved are so staggering. Or maybe it's because people are just tired of watching public officials loot the country while ordinary Nigerians suffer. Whatever the reason, this case has become more than just a legal matter. It's become a symbol, a test case for whether Nigeria can actually hold its most powerful citizens accountable for their actions. It's become a focal point for broader discussions about justice, corruption, political persecution, and the kind of country Nigeria wants to be. As we continue to follow this story, we should remember that behind all the political drama and legal maneuvering, there are real stakes for real people. There are ordinary Nigerians whose lives could have been improved with the money that was allegedly stolen. There's Nnamdi Kanu and his supporters who have been affected by what they see as a corrupt prosecution. There's the broader question of whether Nigeria's institutions can be trusted to deliver justice fairly and consistently. The coming months will likely bring more developments in this case, more revelations, more drama. But whatever happens, this moment represents something significant in Nigeria's ongoing struggle with corruption and accountability. Whether it becomes a turning point or just another disappointing chapter in a long story of impunity remains to be seen. What's certain is that Nigerians will be watching closely, hoping for justice but prepared for disappointment, because that's what experience has taught us. And perhaps that cautious hope, that refusal to become completely cynical despite everything, is itself a form of resilience that has kept Nigeria moving forward despite its many challenges. This is the end of our news update. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notification icon to be the first to be notified whenever we drop new update. Goodbye for now.